Welcome to Tales by Felix, where every story unlocks a new world. Remember to subscribe, like and share. Let's begin. A quaint, slightly dated living room, its walls adorned with faded floral wallpaper and shelves brimming with framed photographs. Sunlight filters through lace curtains, casting soft shadows on a well-worn armchair where Eleanor Vance, a sprightly 76-year-old with silver hair and warm, weathered eyes, sits. She holds a black-and-white photo of a young couple, her and Arthur, her late husband, smiling on their wedding day. A melancholic piano melody underscores the scene, setting a reflective tone. Eleanor's voice, soft yet tinged with unspoken grief, narrates, "At 76, I thought I'd be surrounded by family, sharing stories, laughing over Sunday dinners. But life has a way of rewriting your dreams." The camera zooms in on her hands, trembling slightly as they trace the edges of the photo. 16 years ago, I lost Arthur, the love of my life. His laughter used to fill this house. Now it's just me, and the quiet. The scene shifts to a montage of Eleanor's daily routine, brewing tea in a chipped porcelain cup, tending to her vibrant garden, and flipping through a worn photo album. Each image tells a story, of her son David as a chubby toddler, of family vacations, of Arthur's proud grin at David's college graduation. But the montage slows as it reaches more recent photos. David, now in his late 40s, distant and distracted, his eyes fixed on his phone. The music turns somber. David used to call every week, Eleanor's voiceover continues. But after his divorce 5 years ago, he changed. Work became his world. I barely saw him. My only light was Leo, my grandson. He'd visit, tell me about his dreams, his art school projects. But even Leo couldn't fill the void David left. Eleanor sitting at her kitchen table, a single-place setting. A faint buzz from her phone breaks the silence. She picks it up, her face brightening at Leo's name on the screen. "Grandma." Leo's voice crackles through, youthful and eager. "I've got big news. You sitting down?" Eleanor chuckles, her eyes crinkling. "Leo, I'm 76. I'm always sitting down these days. What's got you so excited?" "It's Dad," Leo says, his tone a mix of thrill and hesitation. "He's getting married again." The music swells with a dramatic sting. Eleanor's smile falters, her grip tightening on the phone. With bold white tea, a mother's intuition is never wrong. And Eleanor's was about to uncover a betrayal she never saw coming. Eleanor's cozy kitchen, where she's still clutching the phone, her face a mix of shock and curiosity. The late afternoon light casts long shadows across the linoleum floor. Leo's voice continues, now laced with unease. "Her name's Victoria," he says. She's 32. And she's got a son, Jasper, who's 19. Dad's head over heels, Grandma." Eleanor's brow furrows. 32, she repeats, her voice steady but probing. "That's quite young for your father. How did they meet?" "At some fancy gala," Leo replies. "She's a model or something. Really glamorous. Dad says she's the one." "But," he trails off. "But what, Leo?" Eleanor presses, leaning forward, her intuition prickling. "I dunno, Grandma. She's nice, I guess. But it's also fast. They've only been dating 6 months. The camera cuts to a quick flashback, a glamorous woman, Victoria, laughing at a gala, her sleek blonde hair catching the light, her hand resting possessively on David's arm. The image is juxtaposed with Eleanor's concerned expression back in the present. The music shifts to a suspenseful hum. Eleanor sets the phone down, her mind racing. She walks to her garden, where vibrant roses bloom under her careful tending. As she clips a thorn, she murmurs to herself, "A mother knows when something's off. And this feels wrong." The scene shifts to Eleanor at her computer, hesitantly typing Victoria Langley into a search engine. Results flood the screen, Instagram photos of Victoria in designer gowns, captions about "living my best life," and a few cryptic posts about "new beginnings." Eleanor's eyes narrow as she spots a photo of Victoria with a teenage boy, Jasper, her son, both posing in front of a luxury car. The caption reads, "Big things coming. #new family. New family." Eleanor whispers, her voice barely audible over the rising music. She clicks on another link, a gossip blog mentioning Victoria's meteoric rise in social circles, hinting at her knack for landing the right connections. Eleanor's intuition screams louder now. She leans back, her face a mix of determination and dread. Eleanor's living room, now dimly lit by a single lamp. Her phone buzzes again, this time displaying David's name. The music is tense, with a slow heartbeat rhythm. Eleanor hesitates, then answers. "David," she says warmly, though her voice carries a cautious edge. "It's been a while." "Mom, hey." David's voice is rushed, almost too cheerful. "So, you heard about Victoria? Leo told you?" "Yes," Eleanor replies, folding her hands in her lap. "Sounds like quite the whirlwind romance." "It is." David laughs, but it sounds forced. "She's amazing, Mom. This wedding's gonna be big. The kind of thing she deserves. Which, brings me to why I'm calling." Eleanor's smile fades. The camera zooms in on her tightening grip on the phone. "Go on," she says. "We're a bit short on funds," David says, his tone shifting to businesslike. "The venue, the catering, it's all top tier. I was hoping you could help out. You know, alone. Maybe $50,000. Eleanor gasps, her hand flying to her chest. $50,000? David, that's half my savings." I know, David says quickly. "But it's a one-time thing, Mom. For my happiness. You want that for me, don't you?" To a flashback of a younger David, hugging Eleanor tightly after she gifted him his first car, a modest gesture compared to this demand. Back in the present, Eleanor's eyes glisten with unshed tears. "Of course I do," she says softly. "But that's a lot of money, David. Can we talk about this?" "It's urgent, Mom," David presses, his voice hardening. "Victoria's counting on it. We need to lock in the venue by Friday." Eleanor hesitates, her gaze drifting to the photo of her and Arthur. The music swells with a mournful violin. "All right," she says finally, her voice breaking. "I'll transfer it. But David, let's talk soon, okay? Really talk." "Yeah, sure, Mom," David says, already distracted. "Thanks. You're the best." The call ends abruptly. Eleanor sits in silence, the weight of her decision settling over her. The camera pans to a stack of bills on her table, her modest pension, her careful budget. Appears, Eleanor thought she was helping her son. But she was about to learn the true cost of his happiness. Eleanor at her kitchen table, surrounded by wedding magazines she's reluctantly bought. She's scribbling notes, trying to contribute ideas for David's big day. The music is a mix of hopeful and ominous tones. She dials David's number, but it goes to voicemail. She tries Victoria's number instead. "Hello, Eleanor," Victoria answers, her voice syrupy sweet but cold. "What's this about?" "I was hoping to help with the wedding plans," Eleanor says, her tone earnest. "Maybe the flowers? I've got a knack for roses, and—" "Oh, Eleanor, that's sweet," Victoria interrupts, her laugh sharp. "But we've got a professional planner. Everything's handled. You don't need to worry." Eleanor's face falls. "I'd just like to be involved, Victoria. It's my son's wedding." "Of course," Victoria says, her tone dismissive. "We'll send you the details. Gotta run. Caterers on the other line." The call cuts off. To a montage of wedding planning, Victoria flipping through mood boards filled with gold accents and crystal chandeliers, laughing with a planner, while Eleanor's emails go unanswered. A voiceover from Eleanor narrates, "I sent ideas, centerpieces, music suggestions. They were ignored. I wasn't a mother planning her son's wedding. I was just the bank." One evening, Eleanor sits with Leo over tea. The camera captures their warm rapport, a stark contrast to her isolation from David. "Grandma," Leo says, his voice low, Victoria's running the show. "Dad's just going along with it. I tried talking to him, but he says it's easier this way." Eleanor sighs, her hands wrapping around her teacup. "I just wanted to be part of it, Leo. To feel like his mother again." Leo reaches for her hand. "You're more than enough, Grandma. They're the ones missing out." Eleanor's determined expression as she nods. Appears, Eleanor was being erased from her son's life. But the worst was yet to come. Pile of invoices spilling across Eleanor's table, designer gown receipts, catering contracts, florist bills for exotic orchids. The sound of a cash register chimes repeatedly, growing louder. Eleanor rubs her temples, her face etched with worry. Her voiceover narrates, "It didn't stop at $50,000. Every week, another bill. Another, urgent, request." A text from David flashes on her phone. "Mom, venue needs another $10,000 for lighting. Can you send it today?" The camera zooms in on Eleanor's tired eyes as she types a reply. "David, this is getting out of hand. Can we discuss?" His response is immediate. "It's for the wedding, Mom. Please." Eleanor visits her bank, the camera capturing her anxious exchange with a teller. "This is my life savings," she says, her voice trembling. "I need to know it's worth it." The teller, a kind older woman, leans forward. "Mrs. Vance, are you sure about this? That's a lot of money." Eleanor forces a smile. "It's for my son," she says, but her voice wavers. Phone call with Victoria. "Eleanor, the florist needs payment by tomorrow," Victoria says briskly. "It's just $8,000 for the custom arches. You're covering that, right?" Eleanor's jaw tightens. "Victoria, I've already sent so much. I wasn't told about more costs." Victoria's tone turns icy. "David said you'd handle it. This is his dream wedding, Eleanor. Don't you want him happy?" Eleanor alone, staring at her depleted bank statement. The music is a heavy, pulsing beat. She whispers to herself, "What am I doing?" Eleanor was drowning in demands. But the final insult was coming, and it would change everything. Eleanor Vance sat at her polished oak dining table, the morning light filtering through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across her hands. In her lap lay a package, its sleek wrapping paper a stark contrast to the dated elegance of her home. She tore it open with cautious anticipation, expecting a thoughtful gesture from her son, David, or perhaps his fiancée, Victoria. Instead, she pulled out a dress, pale beige, shapeless, and utterly devoid of character. It was the kind of garment one might wear to blend into a crowd, not to celebrate a son's wedding. Eleanor's vibrant wardrobe, filled with bold reds and deep blues that reflected her fiery spirit, seemed to mock the drab fabric in her hands. She held the dress up, its limp form swaying slightly. Her reflection in the nearby mirror showed a woman whose silver hair was still styled with care, whose eyes still sparkled with life. This dress was an insult, a deliberate attempt to dim her light. The accompanying note from Victoria was curt. "Dear Eleanor, we've chosen this for you to ensure a cohesive look for the wedding. Please wear it." Victoria. No warmth, no consultation. Just an order. Eleanor's phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was Leo, her grandson, his voice hesitant but warm. "Grandma, did you get the dress?" Victoria's really particular about the aesthetic. Eleanor forced a smile into her voice. "Yes, Leo, I got it. It's understated." Leo chuckled nervously. "Yeah, she's got this whole neutral elegance thing going. You okay with it?" Her heart ached at his concern, but she didn't want to burden him. "It's fine, sweetheart. I just want your dad to be happy." But as she hung up, the dress felt heavier, a symbol of her erasure. She remembered the days when she and David would spend hours picking out fabrics for her sewing projects, his young hands tracing patterns with hers. Now, she was being molded into someone else's vision, her identity stripped away like an old photograph fading in the sun. That evening, she called her old friend, Margaret, a fellow widow with a sharp tongue and sharper wit. "They sent me a sack, Margaret," Eleanor said, her voice trembling with indignation. "A beige sack. I've worn brighter colors to funerals." Margaret's laugh crackled through the phone. "Oh, honey, that's not a dress. It's a punishment. You show up in your signature red, L. Let them choke on their cohesive look." "I can't," Eleanor sighed. "David would be mortified. I don't want to ruin his day." "Ruin his day?" Margaret scoffed. "He's the one letting his fiancée treat you like a prop. You're his mother, not a background extra in their Instagram story." Eleanor hung up, her resolve wavering. She laid the dress across her bed, its blandness taunting her. It wasn't just about the fabric, It was about being reduced to a footnote in her son's life, her vibrant personality deemed too much for Victoria's carefully curated event. The seating chart arrived via email, a glossy PDF that screamed extravagance. Eleanor opened it on her ancient laptop, her fingers trembling with a mix of hope and dread. The wedding venue was a sprawling estate, its banquet hall a vision of chandeliers and velvet drapes. She scanned the chart, her eyes darting past the head table, where David, Victoria, and her son sat in prime position, to find her name. There it was, in tiny font, relegated to table 17, tucked beside the kitchen doors. She'd be seated with distant cousins she hadn't seen in decades and a few of Victoria's acquaintances who'd likely never heard her name. Eleanor's breath caught. She'd imagined sitting near David, sharing a proud smile as he began this new chapter. Instead, she was banished to the fringes, where the clatter of dishes and the bustle of waitstaff would drown out the toasts. Her phone rang, and it was David, his voice clipped, distracted. "Mom, you saw the seating chart, right?" he asked, not waiting for her answer. "Victoria worked hard on it. It's going to be perfect." Eleanor's throat tightened. "David, I'm near the kitchen. Did I do something wrong?" A pause, then a sigh. "Mom, it's not like that. There's just a lot of people, and we had to make tough calls. You'll still have a great time." Her heart sank. A great time didn't include being sidelined at her own son's wedding. "I just thought I'd be closer to you," she said softly. "Mom, please don't make this about you," David snapped, his tone sharp enough to cut. "This is my day." The call ended, leaving Eleanor staring at the screen, the seating chart glowing like a neon sign of her irrelevance. She poured herself a glass of sherry, the amber liquid catching the light. She'd paid for half this wedding, the venue, the catering, the flowers that cost more than her monthly pension. Yet here she was, relegated to the shadows, her sacrifices unacknowledged. She called Leo later, needing his warmth. "Grandma, you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. "I'm fine, Leo," she lied. "Just surprised by the seating chart." He groaned. "Victoria's obsessed with optics. I tried to tell Dad it's not fair, but he's all in on her vision." Eleanor's heart swelled at Leo's loyalty, but it couldn't erase the sting. She was a mother, not a guest to be managed. The kitchen table wasn't just a seat, it was a declaration of her place in David's new world, out of sight, out of mind. The wedding morning dawned crisp and golden, the air humming with anticipation. Eleanor arrived at the venue in a beige dress, her makeup flawless, her silver hair swept into an elegant updo. She'd added a bold sapphire brooch, a small act of defiance against the dress's dullness. She carried a small gift for David, a pocket watch engraved with "Forever my son," hoping to share a quiet moment before the ceremony. But as she approached the groom's suite, a stern-faced event coordinator blocked her path. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance," the young woman said, her smile tight. "They need privacy right now. Family photos are after the ceremony." Eleanor blinked, stunned. "I'm his mother. I just want to see him for a moment." The coordinator's smile didn't waver, but her tone was firm. "Victoria's orders. No interruptions. You can wait in the guest lounge." The guest lounge was a small, windowless room with stale coffee and a single couch. Eleanor sat, clutching the gift box, her heart pounding with disbelief. She'd raised David, bandaged his scraped knees, cheered at his soccer games. Now, she was a stranger, locked out of his world by a closed door and a stranger's command. She texted Leo, her fingers shaking. "Can't see your dad. They won't let me in." His reply was instant. "What? That's ridiculous. I'm coming." Minutes later, Leo appeared, his tie slightly askew, his face flushed. "Grandma, this is insane. I told Victoria it's not." Leo hugged her tightly, his familiar warmth a balm to her wounded heart. "I'm so sorry, Grandma," he whispered. "I'll talk to Dad after the ceremony." "This isn't right." Eleanor nodded, her eyes glistening. "It's okay, Leo. Let's not make a scene today." But inside, the rejection burned. She was escorted to the guest lounge, where she sat alone, the pocket watch box still in her hands. The sounds of laughter and music filtered through the walls, a cruel reminder of her exclusion. She felt like an intruder in her own son's life, her love reduced to a formality. The ceremony was a spectacle of opulence: crystal chandeliers, cascading roses, and a string quartet playing softly. Eleanor sat at table 17, her view partially obscured by a pillar. David stood at the altar, his face glowing with joy as he exchanged vows with Victoria. Not once did he look her way. The officiant's words about love and family felt hollow to Eleanor, who clutched her program, her fingers leaving creases in the paper. She caught Leo's eye across the room, and he gave her a small, apologetic wave. It wasn't enough. The vows ended, the crowd cheered, and Eleanor clapped politely, her heart heavy. She'd dreamed of this day, her son's happiness, but not like this, not as a spectator in her own story. After the ceremony, she approached David, hoping for a moment. "David, sweetheart," she began, holding out the gift. He glanced at Victoria, who was posing for photos. "Mom, can we do this later? We're on a tight schedule." The word stung, but she nodded, retreating to her corner. The pocket watch remained unopened, a symbol of her unspoken love. The reception was a whirlwind of champagne flutes and glittering dresses. Eleanor sat at her banished table, the clatter of kitchen doors drowning out the speeches. Guests swirled around her, none pausing to speak. She'd funded this extravagance, $30,000 of her savings, meticulously saved over years of frugality, but no one acknowledged her. She sipped her wine, watching David and Victoria dance, their laughter a distant echo. A cousin, barely familiar, leaned over. "Nice party, huh? You must be proud." Eleanor forced a smile. "Very proud." But the words tasted bitter. She was a ghost, her contributions invisible, her presence unneeded. Then came Victoria's outburst. She stormed over, her designer gown swishing, her eyes blazing. "Eleanor, are you trying to ruin our day?" she hissed. "Your sighing, your comments, it's bringing everyone down." Eleanor's jaw dropped. "Victoria, I've barely said a word. I've done nothing but support you both." "Support?" Victoria scoffed. "You've been a dark cloud all day. If it's too much, maybe you shouldn't be here." Before Eleanor could respond, David appeared, his face stern. "Mom, it's my wedding. Please, just go." The words were a knife to her heart. She stood, gathered her purse and walked out, her head high but her soul shattered. The reception hall pulsed with the clink of champagne glasses and the hum of laughter, but for Eleanor Vance, the air was thick with betrayal. She sat at her relegated table near the kitchen doors, her beige dress blending into the shadows, her sapphire brooch the only spark of defiance. The weight of her son David's words, "Mom, it would be better if you left," still echoed in her ears, each syllable a fresh wound. She clutched her untouched wine glass, her knuckles white, as she scanned the room for a friendly face. None came. The guests swirled around her, oblivious to the woman who'd funded half this extravagant night. Suddenly, a shadow fell over her table. Victoria, the bride, stood before her, her designer gown shimmering under the chandeliers, her face contorted with barely contained rage. The crowd's chatter faded as Eleanor met her gaze, sensing a storm brewing. "Are you trying to ruin our day, Eleanor?" Victoria hissed, her voice low but venomous, ensuring only Eleanor could hear. "You're sighing, you're sulking, it's casting a shadow over everything." Eleanor's breath caught, her heart pounding. She'd barely spoken all evening, her every move calculated to avoid drawing attention. "Victoria, I haven't said a word," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I've done nothing but support you and David." "Support?" Victoria's laugh was sharp, cutting through the festive din. "You've been a dark cloud since you arrived. Your face screams disapproval. If you can't handle our happiness, maybe you shouldn't be here at all." The words stung like a slap. Eleanor's mind raced back to the months of draining her savings. $30,000 for the venue, the flowers, the catering, all for a day where she was treated like an inconvenience. She opened her mouth to respond, but Victoria leaned closer, her perfume cloying. "I planned every detail of this wedding," Victoria whispered, her eyes glinting with malice. "I won't let you ruin it with your presence." Eleanor's hands trembled, but she held Victoria's gaze. "I'm David's mother," she said softly, her voice laced with steel. "I deserve respect, not accusations." Victoria's lips curled into a sneer. "Respect? You're lucky we invited you at all." She turned on her heel, her gown swishing dramatically, leaving Eleanor frozen in her seat. The nearby guests glanced over, sensing the tension, but quickly looked away, unwilling to get involved. Eleanor felt like a spotlight had burned out, leaving her in darkness. She reached for her purse, her movements slow, deliberate. Her eyes caught Leo's across the room, her grandson, watching with wide, worried eyes. He started toward her, but she shook her head slightly, signaling him to stay put. This wasn't his fight. Not yet. Before Eleanor could process Victoria's venom, David appeared, his tuxedo pristine, his face a mask of irritation. The son she'd raised, the boy who once clung to her skirts, now stood before her as a stranger. The music slowed, and the crowd's chatter seemed to hush, as if the room itself held its breath. "Mom," David said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. "It would be better if you left." Eleanor's heart stopped. The words were a blade, slicing through years of love and sacrifice. She stared at him, searching for a flicker of the boy who'd once called her his hero. "David," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I'm your mother. I've given everything for this day." He sighed, glancing at Victoria, who was now laughing with guests, her outburst forgotten. "Mom, please. This is my wedding. I don't need drama. Just go." Eleanor's eyes burned with unshed tears. She wanted to scream, to remind him of the nights she'd worked late to pay for his college, the years she'd mourned his father alone while he built his new life. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she saw Leo pushing through the crowd, his face flushed with anger. "Dad, what the hell?" Leo snapped, his voice loud enough to draw stares. "Grandma's done nothing but support you, and you're kicking her out?" David's jaw tightened. "Leo, stay out of this. It's not your place. Not my place." Leo's voice rose, trembling with emotion. "She's my grandmother. She paid for half this wedding, and you're treating her like garbage." Victoria reappeared, her arm looping through David's. "Leo, calm down," she said, her tone saccharine. "We just want a perfect day. Eleanor's making it difficult." Eleanor stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "Enough," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. The room seemed to still. "I won't be spoken to like this. Not by you, Victoria. And not by you, David." She looked at her son, her eyes pleading for a moment of recognition, but his gaze was cold, fixed on Victoria. She turned to Leo, her voice softening. "Thank you, sweetheart. But I'll handle this." With that, she gathered her purse and the unopened gift box containing the pocket watch she'd meant for David. Her heart shattered, but her spine was straight as she prepared to walk away. Eleanor's heels clicked against the polished floor as she moved toward the exit, each step a deliberate act of defiance. The reception's music swelled, a lively jazz number, but it couldn't drown out the roar of her thoughts. She felt the weight of every eye in the room, though few dared to meet her gaze. Her beige dress, that symbol of her erasure, seemed to burn against her skin, but her sapphire brooch glinted like a beacon of her true self. As she passed the head table, Victoria's laughter rang out, sharp and performative. Eleanor didn't look back. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Outside, the night air was cool, a stark contrast to the stifling warmth of the hall. She paused at the venue's grand entrance, a single tear rolling down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, her jaw set. Leo caught up to her, his face a mix of fury and sorrow. "Grandma, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't believe Dad did this." Eleanor pulled him into a hug, her strength surprising them both. "It's not your fault, Leo," she said. "You've been my light through all of this. Go back inside. Enjoy the night. I'll be okay." "But you're not okay," he protested, his eyes searching hers. "You don't deserve this." She smiled faintly, her hand cupping his cheek. "Maybe not. But I deserve to choose how I respond. And I choose dignity." She kissed his forehead and turned toward her car, the gravel crunching underfoot. As she drove away, the wedding's lights faded in her rearview mirror, replaced by a growing resolve. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. Eleanor woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window, the familiar creak of her old house a small comfort after the previous night's humiliation. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, a barrage of notifications that she ignored until her coffee was brewed. She sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd once taught David to read, and opened her messages. There were a dozen from David, each more frantic than the last. "Mom, the venue's demanding the final payment. You said you'd cover it. This isn't a joke, Mom. They're threatening to sue. Call me. Why aren't you answering? We need that money now." Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. She remembered the invoices, the endless demands for more. $5,000 for flowers, $10,000 for catering, $15,000 for the venue's deposit. She'd paid it all, depleting her savings, only to be banished to a corner table and told to leave. Her fingers hovered over the reply button, but a memory flashed. David's cold eyes, Victoria's sneer, the locked door of the groom's suite. She called Margaret, her friend's sharp voice a lifeline. "They've got some nerve," Margaret said after Eleanor recounted the texts. "They treat you like dirt, then come begging for cash? Tell them to shove it." "I want to," Eleanor admitted, her voice low. "But what if they really are in trouble?" "Trouble?" Margaret snorted. "They're adults, Elle. Let them clean up their own mess. You've done enough." Eleanor hung up, her gaze falling on the pocket watch she'd meant to give David. She opened the box, tracing the engraving, "Forever my son." The words felt like a lie now. She closed the box and set it aside, her decision crystallizing. She wouldn't reply. Not yet. She wouldn't be their ATM any longer. A slow, determined smile spread across her face. This was her first step toward reclaiming her power. 2 days later, Eleanor's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She answered, expecting a telemarketer, but a crisp voice introduced itself. "Mrs. Vance, this is Richard Howell, representing the wedding venue. We haven't received the final payment of $20,000. I'm afraid we'll need to pursue legal action if it's not settled immediately." Eleanor's pulse quickened, but her voice was calm, honed by years of handling crises alone. "Mr. Howell, I understand your position, but I won't be paying that bill." A pause. "Mrs. Vance, you signed an agreement to cover the costs." "I did," she said, her tone unwavering. "But I also expected to be treated with basic respect as the mother of the groom. Instead, I was excluded, humiliated, and asked to leave an event I largely funded. I consider that a breach of good faith. I won't pay for a service that treated me like an afterthought." Howell sputtered, clearly unprepared for her resolve. "This is highly irregular. We'll need to escalate this." "Escalate all you want," Eleanor replied, a quiet fire in her voice. "I've kept every receipt, every email, every record of what I've paid and how I was treated. I'm prepared to defend my position." She hung up, her hands trembling but her heart steady. She wasn't just refusing a bill, she was refusing to be erased. She called her lawyer, Susan, a no-nonsense woman who'd helped with Arthur's estate years ago. "Susan, I need you," Eleanor said. "They're coming for me, but I'm ready to fight." Susan's voice was warm, encouraging. "Good for you, Eleanor. Let's build your case. They picked the wrong woman to mess with." As Eleanor hung up, she felt a spark she hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about money, it was about her dignity, her worth, her right to be seen. She looked out her window, the world outside bright with possibility. She was done being invisible. Eleanor Vance sat in the cozy office of her lawyer, Susan Carter, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound law books and the faint scent of lavender. The morning light streamed through a large window, illuminating Eleanor's silver hair and the determined glint in her eyes. She'd spent the past week gathering evidence, every invoice, every email, every text from David and Victoria demanding more money for their lavish wedding. The folder before her was thick, a testament to her sacrifices and their ingratitude. This wasn't just about the $20,000 final venue payment she'd refused to pay, it was about reclaiming her dignity. Susan, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, leaned forward, her pen tapping the desk. "Eleanor, you've got a strong case. The venue's contract holds you liable, but their failure to deliver the expected experience, your exclusion, the public humiliation, gives us leverage. You were treated like a bystander, not a key stakeholder." Eleanor nodded, her hands steady despite the fire in her chest. "I don't want to just avoid the bill, Susan. I want them to understand what they did. Not just the venue, David and Victoria too. Susan's lips curved into a knowing smile. Oh, they'll understand. We're not just fighting a bill, we're fighting for respect. Here's the plan. We counter-sue for emotional distress and breach of good faith. We'll subpoena the wedding planner's correspondence to show how they sidelined you. And we'll demand an itemized breakdown of every cent you paid. Eleanor's eyes widened. Can we do that? Absolutely, Susan said, her voice brimming with confidence. You're not the frail old lady they think you are. You're a force, Eleanor. Let's remind them. That evening, Eleanor called her friend Margaret, whose fiery spirit had always bolstered her resolve. Susan's ready to go to war, Eleanor said, a hint of excitement in her voice. I'm not backing down. Margaret's laugh crackled through the phone. That's my girl. You're not just fighting for yourself, Elle. You're fighting for every mother who's been taken for granted. Give 'em hell. Eleanor hung up, her heart pounding with purpose. She wasn't just building a legal case. She was building an army of courage, drawing strength from Susan's expertise, Margaret's fire, and her grandson Leo's unwavering support. Leo had texted earlier, his words a bomb. Grandma, I'm so proud of you. Dad's wrong, and I'm here for you. She smiled, picturing his earnest face. This fight was for him, too, a lesson in standing up for what's right. As she sipped her tea, Eleanor glanced at the pocket watch she'd meant for David, still in its box. Its engraving, "Forever my son," felt like a distant promise, but she wasn't ready to give up on him entirely. Not yet. For now, she was focused on justice, and the battle had just begun. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the driveway of her old Victorian home, watching as a real estate agent hammered a for sale sign into the lawn. The house, with its creaking floors and memories of her late husband, Arthur, and a younger David, had been her anchor for decades. But it was also a tether to a past that no longer served her. The wedding had been a breaking point, and selling the house was her declaration of freedom. She'd found a charming apartment in a vibrant senior community downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a balcony perfect for her gardening. As she unpacked boxes in her new space, sunlight danced across the hardwood floors, and Eleanor felt a weight lift. The beige dress from the wedding was long gone, donated to a thrift store with a note, "For someone who wants to disappear." Her wardrobe now burst with color, emerald greens, sapphire blues, and her signature reds, reflecting the woman she was becoming. Leo helped her move, carrying boxes with a grin. "This place is awesome, Grandma," he said, setting down a crate of her gardening tools. "It's like you're starting a whole new life." "I am," Eleanor said, her eyes sparkling. "I spent too long living for others. This is for me." He hugged her tightly. "You deserve it. And, I'm sorry about Dad. He's been distant since the wedding." Eleanor's heart twinged, but she squeezed his hand. "That's his choice, Leo. But you're here, and that's what matters." That night, she stood on her balcony, a glass of wine in hand, watching the city lights twinkle. The move wasn't just physical, it was a shedding of expectations, of the role of the dutiful mother who sacrificed endlessly. She was no longer David's bank or Victoria's punching bag. She was Eleanor Vance, and her story was hers to write. Eleanor's new life bloomed like the roses on her balcony. She enrolled in a digital literacy class at the community center, her fingers, once hesitant on a keyboard, now navigating with confidence. The instructor, a cheerful young woman named Mia, marveled at her progress. "Eleanor, you're a natural," Mia said during a session on blogging. "You should share your gardening tips online." Inspired, Eleanor revived her old gardening blog, Eleanor's Green Haven, pouring her passion into posts about heirloom roses and sustainable composting. Her vibrant photos and witty prose attracted a small but loyal following, and comments like, "Your garden is my inspiration," warmed her heart. She wasn't just growing plants, she was growing a community. One afternoon, during a painting workshop at the senior center, Eleanor rediscovered her love for art. She'd set aside her paintbrushes after Arthur's death, but now, with a canvas before her, she created bold, swirling landscapes that captured her renewed spirit. "This is incredible," said Clara, a fellow artist, admiring Eleanor's latest piece, a vibrant sunset over a field of wildflowers. "You've got to show these somewhere." Eleanor blushed but felt a spark of pride. "Maybe I will," she said. I'm done hiding. She started an Instagram account, sharing her paintings and garden updates. Her posts, tagged #EleanorReborn, gained traction, with followers praising her resilience. One comment stood out, "You're proof it's never too late to start over." Eleanor read it, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "They're right." Her phone buzzed with a call from Margaret. "Elle, you're a rock star." Margaret exclaimed, "I saw your blog. You're living your best life, and I'm here for it." Eleanor laughed, a sound full of lightness she hadn't felt in years. "I'm just getting started, Margaret. Just wait." One crisp autumn morning, Eleanor attended a local art fair to display her paintings. Her booth, adorned with her vibrant canvases, drew a small crowd. A distinguished man with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard paused at her sunset painting. "This is remarkable," he said, his voice warm. "It feels like hope." Eleanor smiled, her cheeks flushing. "Thank you. That's exactly what I felt painting it." He introduced himself as Robert, a retired doctor who loved art and volunteered at the community center. They chatted for an hour, their conversation flowing effortlessly from painting to gardening to their shared love of jazz. When he asked her to coffee, Eleanor hesitated, then said yes, her heart fluttering like it hadn't in decades. Their coffee date turned into weekly walks, then dinners, then quiet evenings sharing stories over tea. Robert's gentle humor and genuine interest in her life felt like a balm after years of loneliness. One evening, as they strolled through a park, he took her hand. "Eleanor," he said softly, "you've brought color back into my days." She squeezed his hand, her eyes misty. "And you've reminded me what it's like to feel seen." Their romance was tender, unhurried, a delicate bloom after years of winter. Eleanor told Leo about Robert during a visit, her voice shy but joyful. "He sounds great, Grandma," Leo said, grinning. "You deserve someone who makes you happy." For the first time, Eleanor felt whole, not as a mother or a widow, but as a woman with dreams, passions, and a future wide open. One quiet evening, as Eleanor sat in her apartment, her phone buzzed with a text from David. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was wrong. Can we talk?" She stared at the words, her heart a tangle of emotions. She remembered the wedding, Victoria's venom, David's cold dismissal, the years of taking her for granted. The apology was a start, but it felt like too little, too late. She set the phone down, her hand steady, and walked to her balcony. The sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, a mirror to the life she'd built. She called Margaret, needing her friend's clarity. "He apologized," Eleanor said. "But I don't know if I'm ready to respond." "Don't rush," Margaret advised. "You've spent years waiting for him to see you. Let him wait now. You're not that invisible woman anymore." Eleanor nodded, her resolve firm. She didn't reply to David's text. Instead, she returned to her canvas, painting a new piece, a bold, radiant figure standing tall against a stormy sky. It was her, unbowed, unbroken. Her blog and Instagram continued to grow, her story inspiring thousands. Comments poured in, "You're my hero. Never too late to choose yourself." Eleanor read them, her heart full. She didn't need David's validation anymore. Her worth was in her art, her garden, her love with Robert, her bond with Leo. Her victory wasn't revenge, it was radical self-love, a life reclaimed. As the camera panned to her smiling at the sunset, the screen faded to black with text. Eleanor Vance chose herself. "What will you choose?" The music swelled triumphantly, leaving viewers inspired and eager for more. The end.